Just settle in. We're go. All right. So, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I don't think you and I have really like gone into these details of your story because your experience with loving someone who is struggling with addiction goes way back. So, would you mind just sharing a little about your personal experience and how addiction has impacted the dynamics of your family?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's best to probably just start with the basics of my family. I, the, then there's quite an age gap. So there's 9 years between me and my sister, and then 13 between me and my brother. So I think that's kind of important to the story because I was so much younger than, my siblings.
Yeah.
I grew up like we had a mom and dad, um, pretty normal. No abuse, no trauma. They took care of us. We were fed, clothed, um, and we just jump into my the sibling side and the growing up side. So my sister, I guess she had the gateway drug to using, and that's trauma. She was sexually abused for about 5 years, and so by the time, also we lived in California. That's kind of a little different dynamic. Um, but by the time she was 12 years old, she was in active addiction, and so that was, I mean, it's hard to think that was like in the early mid 80s. Different time from where we are now, but yeah, I mean, she was in the throes of addiction at 12, 13 years old.
Do you remember what that was like at that time? Do you remember? I mean, I'm sure you were little. If she's 9 years older than you, so you
Yeah,
were three.
I was like 3 or 4. And it's like I've tried to think about it, getting ready for this call. And one of again, I'm just going to jump right in there. It's like trigger warning, whatever.
Okay.
But one of the biggest, earliest memories I have, because there's so many, I just don't have a lot of memories that were normal or per se normal. So my first memories as a really small child. So I was under the age of 7, so I had to be around 5. Is my parents. So my sister's addiction was, she would come home, to the family unit for a brief period of time, and then she would run away to the streets. So, and that was just kind of our family dynamic. But one of my first memories was my mom got a phone call, and they were, my parents were in the other room. They were crying. They were devastated. And I was like, Mom, what's wrong? And she was like, your sister's been arrested for prostitution. And I was like, I said, well, what's that? Obviously. And she's like, well, she sold her body. And I was like, so imagine like 5-year-old me. I couldn't figure out, like, why was she cutting off a finger? That's like the literal of my,
Yeah.
why is she sell like a finger or what? I didn't have the comprehension. I was so young, but yet, like, it was all encompassing the whole family. It was like that's what we ate, breathed, and slept. Was the addiction. So that's one of my first memories. And as I got older, I understood the meaning of it, but that was one of the first things that I ever remember. I know as a child, I went to like countless, therapy appointments, rehab visits. What's it called where you sit somebody down? Intervention? Yeah. I was involved in those really young, and it's like, I was involved in something that I had no comprehension of. How do you explain that to a child?
Uh-huh.
You know, and it's still, I thought, what would be the answer? And I don't have an answer to that, Still the question in my mind of how would you explain that to a child? But I just know like nothing was explained. So I kind of left to my own devices.
Do you think there would have been a way to make that a child appropriate conversation? We're going to do an intervention on your sister?
Yeah, I don't. I think that there's kind of conversation, but there just wasn't. And so I obviously, as I got older, learned what some of these things were. I learned what some of these actions were, but at the time, just being a little 5-year-old me, I had no idea. All I knew was, you don't. It's normal for you if that's what you're used to, right? If we grow a certain way, no matter, even if it's a traumatic growing, we think that's normal because that's all we know. So, and go ahead, sorry.
So I was just going to say there really wasn't like a before addiction and after addiction. It was just being raised in addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it like a constant feeling of like I just knew my parents were drained. They were emotionally spent. They were emotionally drained. And again, if that's normal for your house, it you know what I mean? But there was a point where we moved to Utah, and I think, overall things got, at least for those of us at home, things got a little better. And I think that they weren't as emotionally spent. I don't know. Maybe they were just away from it, but there was kind of a marked in my mind where it changed. They weren't.
What was that like for you to have that change of things going from being your entire family life revolving around the dynamics of the addiction, right? And whatever was happening with your sister, she'd come home and then she'd beeline it out of there as quick as she could to go back to doing whatever she was doing. And then she'd come home, and then you come to Utah and things changed and maybe quieted down for a little bit. What was that like for you?
It was awesome. Like, I felt like, I can only imagine as a, parent, because I've been on the other side of that too. But when you're so emotionally spent, you just have nothing. You're just providing your kids with the minute. You know what I mean? And so to have those interactions with my parents, finally, you know what I mean? Felt good. I started forming like some more, like better memories, not as fragmented, if that makes sense.
So that's a period of time that you're able to remember and maybe have some fondness of.
Yeah. Even though, we still were revolving around addiction. It's like, we're in this rehab now. Oh, we've left that rehab. Oh, where is she? It was just that sort of thing. It was just all the time.
No time to rest.
No,
Yeah.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And I think you never know what's going to come next. You know what I mean? You get to the point where just nothing shocks you.
You can't. You don't have the capacity to be shocked anymore. You can't be shocked.
No. And it's hard to think that that's, where your life is, but there's just so many different things coming at you. And yeah, like from the perspective that, I'm not in active addiction, it's just one thing after another. It's hard to understand. And I think that's like a takeaway that, we'll really never understand that mind and that mindset if you're not in that mindset.
Yeah, it's hard to understand that mindset. I think a lot of family members of, with loved ones in active addiction and maybe even in recovery. The recovery part of it, right? Where they go to rehab, they get out of rehab, they come home, and everything feels good, but there's this deep underneath knowing that it's temporary. I,
Right. And that, you want to be positive and you want to
mm-hmm,
think and that everything's going to be fine. And then just, it's not always.
mm-hmm.
I mean, how statistics are, how many times usually people have to go through, um, therapy before it sticks. I would think it's pretty.
Yeah, I think the average is like 7 people. People typically go to treatment at least 7 times, or make the attempt at least 7 times. I may be mixing it up with another statistic, but
No,
working in addiction recovery, I did see sometimes it's like a revolving door. Sometimes they go out and they're right back in.
it is. And it's hard for everybody to sit there. The first couple times you feel like it's not any better ever.
Yeah. So tell me about your own experiences with your sister's addiction, and then later on you kind of alluded to a little bit, you were on the other side of the parent experiencing addiction.
So, I mean, by the time that I was um, old enough to realize what was going on, to, understand what drugs are, to understand what, these things are,
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't have a lot of compassion for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I could go back, I would change that. And I thought of, some of the things that when somebody's in active addiction that they do, and I'm like, it's easy to look back on it now, and I just think, how much pain would they have had to been in to do those things? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling the lying, the manipulation, whatever they have to do to get their money for their fix. Like, how much pain do they have to be in to be doing those things?
How did you shift into that perspective?
I think I had to make sense of it, because it's like you look to somebody and you love them, and you love them, but there's these things about them that they're doing, and you're just like, how do you like put it together, mesh it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I had to mesh it, was to know that, like, in their right mind, they wouldn't do those things. Same with me. You know what I mean? I wouldn't do those things. And so how much of a desperate place would I have to be in to do those things? That's just kind of how I had to make sense of it in my mind.
And that helped with compassion.
I think so. I mean, if I could go back, trust me, I wish I was way more compassionate, because, with my sister, especially as we got older, and, I became a teenager, and, this was just a lifelong behavior for her. It just never got, it obviously got worse, but she never healed from that. So sorry, as I got older, that's where I created the boundaries for myself. Once I started having a family, a child, I had to create those boundaries, because, again, exhausting, the emotional toll. I just had to create the boundaries and put space there.
How did you do that with your sister?
I wouldn't answer her calls. I just, kept interactions limited. I said some, terrible things, but I just, obviously, once I got to the point where I was living on my own and I was an adult, I just, I didn't answer my phone. I reached out, I attended family things. We were together, but the relationship was definitely strained at that point.
Were there ever times that you were able to make amends here and there when, periods of sobriety maybe that she had, that you were able to kind of repair the relationship a little bit and have some closeness?
Definitely. There was definitely some times where, where using wasn't a big a thing, and we could, be sisters and relax and, have a normal night, a normal dinner and games or movie. So many people take that for granted, but when you've lived that, when that's been encompassing, sometimes those little things like, a game night is a huge thing, Holidays were, actually they were really good, you know what I mean? Really good memories. So I'm glad that we were able to have those times so that when those later memories were forming in my mind, I was able to have some, more positive and some good interactions.
What did you learn about you through those experiences with her? Because this is happening, all throughout your life. So many different crucial periods of development for you, right? And kind of developing your sense of self. And if you're always chasing your sister, if you're always being involved in an intervention, really adult type of issues for such a small child, how were you able to get through this experience and learn more about yourself and become more about leaning into who you are?
Well, I'll tell you one of the ways I got through it as a child, and then we can talk about later. But this is wacky, so if you need to come and start out, you can. But I had an imaginary family, per se, for years growing up. Like, I had a full other. It gets hard. It's emotional to think about.
Yeah.
That I created that in my mind. I think is like a safe spot.
Well, when you're going through something like this, you have to find ways to survive it. You have to do things that make sense for you. And if you're born in flames, why wouldn't you assume the world was on fire, right?
Create your own little. Pretty extensive for me. You know what I mean? I would go to school, and that was my family I talked about. And so obviously I've healed past that part, but I look at it and I'm like, that had to have been my safe spot where I went to, when things weren't right or when things were painful.
Yeah. Still stings pretty good.
It does. Yeah. So sorry, you asked more questions. You'll have to ask him again
developing that sense of self. That's resiliency. That's a lot of resiliency there is creating this family. These people are unhinged. They're scrambling around this thing called addiction, right? You have this idea in your head, your sister's cutting off her body parts to sell them because that's kind of how you had to make sense of what your mom said. And so it makes sense that you would try to fill in the gaps with things that you knew best, just to make sense of your world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how did you come to a sense of self? How were you able to kind of know this, okay, I'm telling you about this family, but this over here is the real deal. They're the people I got to go home to. But this is the one that this is the family that keeps me okay. How did you know to differentiate between the two?
I don't know. I just, as developmentally as I got older, I could understand that, and I could assume, my role in the family, who was, and I think I'm of that generation where we grew up and we were better to be seen and not heard, right? my dad told me that multiple times. And I think that's kind of how I, like read the room, read the people in the room, but just, quiet in your own little shell is how, I think I got myself into out of, out of
Yeah. So part of it was just surviving the generation.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun. And now you're like, talk about your feelings. Express yourself. And that was, oh, maybe other family. That certainly wasn't my family.
No, no, it was not my feelings. What are those?
Put that away.
Shh. Just stop doing that. Why are you so weird? Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know where we are, like, as far as a timeline.
Chronological timeline. Okay. So you talked some about Melanie, and then you kind of brought up kind of moving into like the shift. You become an adult, you start your family, raising kids, and then something else happened. Lots of something else has happened, but something specific, right? I mean, when we're talking about this, and you also discovered that somebody else that you were very close to was struggling with addiction.
Right. So when I was growing up as a child, I saw these horrific things, and I was like, I will never touch hard drugs again.
Mm-hmm.
And that I just was like, no, thank you. And so, when I, became a mom, obviously, I had a, my oldest daughter went through addiction, and, finding that out was, like, I don't, like, how could this happen again? You know what I mean? Like, how did I let this happen again?
Mm.
What did I do? But obviously that wasn't about me, but that's kind of how I felt about it at the time, is like, how could I be going down this road again?
Mm.
I don't want them out,
I think as a mom, you do that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What could I have done differently? How did I allow this to happen with my child? And
yeah. Even though she's a grown adult by the time, you know what I mean? I think she kind of, struggled when she was younger, obviously, but by the time she was in, active addiction, she was a full-on adult.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so seasoned from my sister that it was easy for me to jump into line. Like, we never had problems with, like, boundaries. We never had, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but I was so seasoned at addiction that I just immediately put up those boundaries with her, and she didn't really push them either. She didn't really push those boundaries. It was, I don't know how we did it, but
Did that feel like maybe she had adopted some helplessness if she wasn't pushing against those boundaries? Like, she was just not so much in a sense she was trying to be respectful of your boundaries, but kind of like, well, I'm not going to be able to...
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not going to be able to express my needs or advocate or assert, or not that those are like super top priorities when you're struggling with addiction, but do you think she was respectful of the boundaries, or do you think it was kind of like a relief for her that she wouldn't have to have accountability, or what do you think was the reason behind that?
Truthfully, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know. I don't know. But it's like, boundaries with her. I don't think as a mom that I didn't go into overgear. I mean, I was stalking my child. I'll be honest. Like, I was, maybe I was crossing boundaries. You know what I mean? I was, stalking my phone bill to, you know what I mean, to look at active times, because when you love somebody, you know that you could get that phone call that they're gone at any time. And so I was like maybe hyper vigilant in trying, make sure that I knew what was going on as best I could,
Trying to stay one step ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's what I felt like I had to do.
Mm-hmm. So what did that look like? I mean, you said you were stalking her. As a mom, I mean, you're going to beg and plead and follow and do everything, right? You get a little crazy with it.
Yeah, definitely. I got a little crazy with it. Like I said, I was like, why am I still paying, a phone bill for somebody that I know is using it for, things that they shouldn't be. And I, on Verizon, I could see when she was active, when she wasn't, and that was just, I don't know. I just, just trying to see if she was okay, Obviously, the addiction placed a huge, distance between us. And so I just didn't know. I didn't know if she was okay. And I needed to know that she was okay, that she was with us. Mm-hmm. It's like a basic survival for myself.
Well, yeah. Wanting to know if she's okay. That's the scary part, is knowing that call could come at any time.
Right. And I think as people are more educated about it, about addiction, and we know the consequences now, as an adult woman, I know the consequences of an overdose. I know the consequences of jail, prison time, or getting clean, or just, I know that the possibilities that we could go. And so, I mean, I guess it's good that, how do you say it's good, but
we're more educated, right? It gives us a little bit of hope, but we can look at it through a different lens and be with it in a different way. But so with your sister, I mean, you say you're seasoned in being with addiction, and with your sister, you did all these interventions, which as a child, you don't even know what the hell those are, right? Like, why are we?
I mean, I just had no business.
Right.
Brought that as like it's my responsibility. You know what I mean? Like it's my responsibility to help fix, help save this.
Yeah. Or like you even have the power.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so ridiculous, but.
Right. And that plays out later, right? And then your child is going through addiction. And that's such a helpless feeling, such an alone feeling. I always say it's not the casserole disease. Nobody's coming to your door with dinner. Like, I heard your kid relapsed, right? And I know that's a really big struggle. So what can I come in and help you with things? Like people treat you like you're a leper. They treat you like you have the plague, and they need to stay away from you and don't go anywhere. Like, there's no compassion. We're not getting compassion from.
Zero compassion. And I think there's a lot of shame, you just shame and hard to admit, like people, even though so many people are dealing with it, that how could we not, you know what I mean? How is it that way that you feel so alone in it? I don't know, but you do.
Because the stigma, it's the judgment around it.
Right.
Like, what kind of mom were you for, this to happen with your kid?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's that judgment from other people, but then you've got this judgment on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just easier to just kind of,
yeah,
feel a little torturous way.
Alone and quiet and completely internalized. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did you take the intervention route when your daughter?
I don't think I even really had the chance to.
Uh-huh.
Um, things escalated so quickly. Um, again, I just set my boundaries, and it played out so quickly. As I think about, like, other people that are struggling in addiction, that it goes on for a life. It can be a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And was a lifetime, and our story was just really short and capped, luckily, where I think minimal damage was done for everybody. And I don't know if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. So how did she's in recovery now?
Yeah, she's over 4 years.
Wow. Wow. How did that recovery process go for you? What was well, your daughter's getting better, right? She went to treatment? Uh-huh. And what did you do to recover? Because that's I mean, that's got to open up all the things from when you were a kid and experiencing with your sister, and now it's your daughter, so there's that fear added on top of it. What kind of recovery did you go through?
I don't know that I had enough. I don't know that I did. I just think that I just tried to be as supportive for her as possible. In the back of my mind, I was, my reality was like, this probably isn't going to stick,
Hmm.
um, that like, it's going to be the worst case scenario overplaying in your head, but obviously it did. And what did my recovery look like? I don't know that I really ever did, except for I think my recovery was like just to rebuild that relationship. And just, not take what happened in the addiction. You have to forgive it. You just have to forgive it. You have to let it go, and you have to put it in the past. If you're going to heal a relationship after that, it just has to be left there.
How do you do that, though?
I guess you choose the relationship. You choose, do I want a relationship with my child, or do I want to harbor these feelings that she already feels bad enough for herself about? And would I rather have that relationship with her, or would I rather be mad about something that she did? No, I'm going to choose the relationship with my child anytime. And I'm going to forgive and put it in the past and leave it there and never bring it up again. Because I feel like if you're going to forgive somebody past it, that's your duty, is to put it in the past and leave it there.
So, but recovery for you and grieving, like the fear and the shock, shock of the discovery. How did you find out about?
Well, her sister knew something was up, as I did, and she came and called me and told me what was happening, and then it all made sense. Once I had that final, I kind of thought maybe that was an issue, but then it all made sense. The behaviors I was seeing.
So if you were to separate the behaviors from the addiction, because in addiction recovery and working with families, we talk a lot about it's not about the substance, it's about the behaviors that we have the boundaries with, right? Because the substance, I don't necessarily feel like the substance is the problem. I feel like something underlying is the problem that needs to be addressed. The substance for a lot of people, the process, whatever it is typically the solution. And a lot of the times when addiction occurs, especially in when it's in the context of a relationship, it's sometimes because that person wants to, they've tried all other attempts to connect with another person who may use. And this is like that last ditch effort. Like, I want to be able to connect with this person. And so moving into use with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if we separate the behavior from the addiction with experiences like with your daughter, right? I mean, I guess are there things that you noticed that shifted or changed with her, and when her sister called you and that kind of confirmed what you were concerned about anyway, what were the shifts in her behaviors?
Like a lack of communication with me was I mean, we text multiple times during the day, and we always have, post getting through their teenage years and stuff, we text all day, we talk, and that kind of stopped. And that was so that something was wrong, because it was drastic.
Suddenly.
Yeah, I mean, and I can only just assume that when you start using, and you don't want people to know, so you're going to out, because you want to keep that hidden. So that was my biggest clue, is communication, and just again, just bizarre kind of behavior that you're like scratching your head at, like, what is going on here? What that isn't her normal self.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing some of the things that you saw, just in case anybody else is seeing things that they're kind of scratching their head with their kid or their spouse?
I just think that she put the boundary up between us, instead of coming over here, stopped coming over, it's stuff I don't want to say too much about, just because a lot of it's her story. But changes, responsibility changes, just overall, not things that make you scratch your head, and think, what in the world's going on here? Those were my cues that something was wrong. And again, I didn't know it was wrong. I didn't know, did you just, struggling with some depression, just, because anytime you, look at, and you're scratching your head, is it, are they depressed? Are they this? Are they, it's always something that I think could be an issue with somebody.
We don't typically go straight to, geez, I wonder if they're using drugs. And I as a mom, we want to try out all the other things first. Let's not go to worst case scenario. We don't want to, but sometimes we do. Are you on dope? What's going on here? So what do you think you would tell somebody who had asked you for advice on if they were just beginning to navigate their loved one's addiction?
I would say to, like, hard for me, but you get so filled with emotion, and it comes out in anger, that and behind that anger is a love and a worry, and sometimes our mouths just, like, they say terrible things and we can't take it back. And I would really, anybody that's starting knows that this is in their life, like, really I might not get a chance to take that back. And that's just again, that's my reality of addiction, is like, it really could end with that phone call, and you can't take back words. You can set a boundary and say, listen, I'm not going to engage in this conversation with you. When you want to have another one, please call me. I love you. And then go home and scream into your pillow if you need to. But I mean, just for your own self, that you're not left with, like, that guilt of, saying things out of anger that you just, we would like to take back.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, keep at it. Like, they do get better. They do,
They do get better.
They do. People can recover, and people can recover and live, amazing life. And just remembering that. And then seeking out other people, I wouldn't, even now, I wouldn't even know who to go to. You know what I mean? If there's a group, I don't know, we can commiserate. But you need that support. You need somebody that you can talk to and give the gritty details, and somebody that will listen. And if you want to go park outside their house and watch to see what's going on, that will go with you.
Right. Yeah. I'm driving over here. Right. Here's my location. Come find me. I'm going to go check it out and see what's happening.
If you don't hear from me in 20 minutes, please call.
So what would you tell somebody who's feeling that guilt and shame for not being able to fix, right? The fix their loved one's addiction? Because, we don't have a whole lot of power in it.
Yeah, we don't. And I think remembering that, therapy for yourself.
Yeah.
Even having the discussion with you, people don't talk about you know what I mean? People don't, talk about, commiserate with the family side of it. You're so focused on the addict that the rest of us kind of get left behind, and it's a sad place to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So, taking care of yourself, remembering that it's a legitimately hard place that you're in. Take that time for yourself, whatever that self-care may be for you.
Mm-hmm.
You literally have to. And just because other people want to forget your needs, don't, you know what I mean? You're your biggest advocate. So
mm-hmm.
advocate for yourself, take care of yourself. Nobody's going to do it for you.
Right. And they wouldn't know how to.
No.
People fumble it a lot. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to interact. They stay away, right? They're gonna create their distance away from you, and they're gonna move away from you and be like, oh, let me know, right? But then they're gonna stop it, as if it's addiction is contagious.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think people are scared to normalize it. It'll be accepted. It's never going to be accepted, but it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I always have thought about this as I've, watched other people struggle. Like, you could just be a car accident away from being addicted.
Mm-hmm.
You could be from, walking down that path. Like, stop. It's easy for me to say this now. I have lost my sister, and I have a great relationship with my daughter, but it's easy for me to say, like, don't try not to place too much judgment there. But it's something that I feel like needs to be said more.
I was going to ask you what's helped you heal from the emotional toll of loving someone in addiction, and I think we kind of touched on that a little bit a few moments ago, when you said I don't know that I have really.
I don't know that I have. I think I just have learned to live with it, and I've learned to, I don't know. That might sound bad, but I've dealt with it. I just think it's just been a little pieces at a time, of finding forgiveness in myself, realizing, you're not to blame, and realizing that you're literally helpless in a situation.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, I don't think I'm 100% healed. You know what I mean? I don't think there's such a thing. I don't think you're ever 100% healed from trauma. I think you heal enough to make it, and then you just little bits at a time. You know what I mean? We keep building on what works, and we keep, learning things about ourselves. We learn things about each other, and that's how we quote unquote heal.
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to there not being a lot for families in addiction recovery. There's not. Yeah. Did they ever call you and say, "Hey, come and do a family session with your daughter"?
We did not do a family session.
Right. So those dynamics, right? And knowing, and I think you going through the experience of it with your sister, knowing how it shifts those dynamics, being able to kind of cultivate a sense of self, and those dynamics shifting, and then seeing it with your daughter too, and knowing not to take those dynamics into the relationship later with her, because you guys were pretty close before the addiction hit. And so I think having that solid foundation and then coming back into it, being able to kind of, I mean, that's master level. Yeah, that's not an easy place to get to.
No, but it's worth it once you get there.
Yeah.
Definitely worth it. It's a peaceful place to be.
Yeah. If you could go back and say anything to the version of you that experienced this, and there are many versions of you, right? All through, what would you say to her?
I mean, knowing what I know now, what I say to that little girl, like, don't carry it. Don't carry it on your shoulders. It's not your burden to carry. And just be more compassionate, be more loving, so that you're not left holding, I should have said this, I should have done that. It's a bad place to be.
Oh, yeah. What do you think you would say to the mom part of you?
Going back, probably just like hug. I just like maybe a hug. I don't know that there's really anything that verbally that would have made it better, but just have somebody there, and just to know that it didn't end. You know what I mean? There is another side to it. Mm-hmm. Not everybody gets there, but it can happen, because when I had my lifetime of my sister, and then my daughter went through it, I was set up for this being a whole lifetime. And I think it's a fair it's a fair thought.
Yeah.
But there's also another side where they do recover, and we can move past it. And I think just reminding myself that would have been helpful.
Yeah. It's hard to get there, though, when it's your kid.
It is.
Yeah, it's hard to have that realization, because every single day you're going second by second. Mm-hmm. You're in the trenches with them.
Your mind is, you know what I mean? No, what your child's basic, you don't know if their basic needs are being met. You know what I mean? Are they? It's a hard place. I wish families would band together more and support each other more.
How would they do that, though? I mean, there's so much anger. There's resentment. There's frustration. There's fear. I think everybody has a different relationship with the person who's
Oh,
going
sure.
through the addiction, and how would they do that?
Um, Such a good question. Just I don't know. I think I think something needs to be thought of for it. I think it's a needed group. You can search on Facebook dang near anything, and maybe you can search families of addiction, I don't know, but you can search a weight loss group, you can search sourdough, you can find like-minded people for almost dang near anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the trauma related things, people are like, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit to that.
No, we have to keep it looking shiny.
Right.
Yeah. But again, there's that fear of, or maybe even denial. Because I think you go through a grief process when you
So,
find out about the addiction, right? And I think everybody kind of rallies around and almost protects the addiction.
mhm.
There's a protection of it, which is strange. I mean, you wouldn't think like who's protecting the addiction, but really, I mean, it serves a significant purpose. Like, I can be frustrated and angry with you, or I have something to point my frustration and anger at now, and I can point it at the addiction, and
Right.
that means I don't have to be angry with you. I can blame it on this, and if you come over or if I see you and you're high, then I can be mad at that. And I can look at it like something took my child or something took my sibling or my parent or, it's taking them away.
Well, I think it's easy. It's it's nice to have um, that umbrella to put it under,
Mm-hmm.
under the umbrella of addiction. And I think that, oh my gosh, my phone bill is dead. I think it's nice. I mean, not nice, but we do that. You know what I mean? We tend to blame and rightfully so. We blame the addiction
Yeah.
um, as for all these other,
Mm-hmm.
for all these other things.
Yeah. It's hard to stay focused on the behaviors, right?
It is.
Yeah.
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 So many all over it.
All over the place.
Yeah.
All over the place. Well, Michelle, I appreciate you so much. And you said your phone's about to die, so um,
Yeah.
is there anything you want to add? Anything you feel would be important for people to know?
I mean, take care of yourself, be vigilant, be compassionate. Um, remember the people in your household that are struggling with you. Everybody's struggling. We don't need to isolate ourselves in our own, because the whole family's struggling. Rather it's the grandma, whether it's the 5-year-old. Be more loving towards each other, be more compassionate, um, be firm in your be firm in your boundaries, and realize you're doing them out of love, and they will understand someday. They will. You know what I mean? If you get to that point, they will understand your boundary, and they will respect you for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a catalyst to help rebuild the relationship on the other side. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording, but I'm going to keep you on, okay? All right. So if you have any questions or any topics that you'd like to see covered, go ahead and leave something down in the comments, and we'll get to them. If you have any questions for Michelle or for myself, feel free to ask away. Thanks so much.